Calmness. A Zen poem says, "After the wind stops I see a flower falling. Because of the singing bird I find the mountain calmness." Before something happens in the realm of calmness, we do not feel the calmness. Only when something happens within it do we find the calmness. Hello and welcome back to our reading of Suzuki Roshi's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. I'm on page 121, looking at the chapter on calmness. Before something happens in the realm of calmness, we do not feel the calmness. Only when something happens within it do we find the calmness. So in Zazen, we are experiencing this state of calmness, and our Zazen can unfold as if nothing is happening. And this nothing is happening, feeling nothing, is part of the practice. And when something occurs in the Zazen and we become self-conscious or aware, then we realize that we were in a state of samadhi, in a state of intense concentration, where we have forgotten ourself and forgotten selfhood and where we are and what we're doing. And like the silence, the mountain silence is only apparent when the bird sings. So this state in our Zazen only is thrown into our attention when something breaks it. You'll know this from sitting Zazen yourself. You'll know that for a period of your Zazen, it's like nothing has happened. And then something will break that. There's a Japanese saying, "For the moon there is the cloud, for the flower there is the wind." When we see a part of the moon covered by a cloud or a tree or a weed, we feel how round the moon is. But when we see the clear moon without anything covering it, we do not feel that roundness the same way we do when we see it through something else. So the moon, of course, is in the Zen tradition a symbol of enlightenment. And this enlightenment is made apparent through what we consider ordinary life, or things that are not to do with what we imagine as an exalted state of enlightenment. When you're doing Zazen, you are within the complete calmness of your mind. You do not feel anything. You just sit. But the calmness of your sitting will encourage you in your everyday life. So actually, you will find the value of Zen in your everyday life, rather than when you sit. But this does not mean you should neglect Zazen. Even though you do not feel anything when you sit, if you do not have this Zazen experience, you cannot find anything. You just find weeds or trees or clouds in your daily life. You do not see the moon. So, many times over the last number of weeks, months and years, as I've been speaking with you, what keeps coming up is this Zazen is good for nothing, that Zazen is not orientated towards any goal. And this is very, very important in practice. That it is, that your Zazen is not just another tool that you use in your life to better your life. It is an unconditioned state that is not caught up in the realm of delusion, samsara, and desire. So this can be emphasized a great deal, and it should be in our practice. But I'm going to just flip it now and say that this practice also resonates throughout your life. that you can, in a relative sense, make progress in this practice. It's important that you're not seeking progress, that you're giving up all ideas of progress when you're sitting Zazen. But outside, in your normal life, outside this sitting experience, there will be a resonance, and you will see a progress in how you sit. And it's an unending progress. It is not a progress whereby a goal is achieved and you have mastered Zazen and that's it. You're done with it. You move on to something else. No, it is an endless progress. Now, if you stand back from a journey of progress and look at it in a very universal way, then this progress indeed is not progress. So it can be viewed from the standpoint of the relative, or you can stand back and look at it in a universal or absolute way. And then the entire journey is beginningless and endless. For Zen students, a weed, which for most people is worthless, is a treasure. With this attitude, whatever you do, life becomes an art. When you practice Zazen, you should not try to attain anything. Here we go. This is what we were talking about a few minutes ago. You should just sit in the complete calmness of your mind and not rely on anything. And then he goes on to say, in our everyday life, we are usually trying to do something, trying to change something into something else, or trying to attain something. Just this trying is already in itself an expression of our true nature. So this is very human. This is the human way to act. The meaning lies in the effort itself. We should find out the meaning of our effort before we attain something. So Dogen said, we should attain enlightenment before we attain enlightenment. It is not after attaining enlightenment that we find its true meaning. The trying to do something in itself is enlightenment. When we are in difficulty or distress, there we have enlightenment. We should have composure. Usually when we find it very difficult to live in the evanescence of life, this is the temporary or transitory nature of life, but it is only within the evanescence of life that we can find the joy of eternal life. It's interesting in these teachings, Suzuki Roshi mentions God, he mentions eternal life. He is articulating the Zen tradition in these instances for, of course, a Western audience who are more familiar with Judeo-Christian terms. So, but he's communicating an essential truth about God or eternal life because he's using language to describe something indescribable, as we would see in the Zen tradition, but he's trying to describe it for a Western audience here back in the 1970s, 1960s, whenever these talks were given. So he uses the term here, eternal life. And usually we find it very difficult to live in this transitory life, but that life itself is the eternal life. So this is, again, this non-dualistic understanding of reality. That our Zazen, sitting Zazen and feeling nothing, is still, because you're in this unconditioned state, because if you were to feel something, there would be a subject feeling that something. And in Zazen, the subject, ourself, falls away as we encounter things as they are. So if there is a feeling of something in Zazen, there is a subject feeling it. Now this subject returns in and out, sometimes during a sitting period, sometimes is absent, sometimes is there all along. No matter. Because this transitory relative experience is itself eternal life, as Suzuki Roshi articulates it here today. So, and then we get up off the cushion and we re-enter our life which we have never left. And this is also the realm of the ultimate truth, the ultimate truth of the way things are. So we should attain this teaching by Dogen. We should attain enlightenment before we attain enlightenment. Is stepping back and looking at it from that universal or big view of all the little instances of progress we make, what appear to us as progress on the path, are all just added up to the entire path itself. So it is practice enlightenment that Dogen is teaching, that this is enlightenment now, that we are enlightened before we are enlightened, and that is why we practice as we orientate ourselves towards enlightenment. By continuing your practice with this sort of understanding, here he goes, you can improve yourself. So, on one hand, we're not seeking to improve ourselves, because if we do, our zazen is tainted. However, without trying, there is this flowing forth of improvement into our life. But if you try to attain something without this understanding, you cannot work on it properly. You lose yourself in the struggle for your goal. You achieve nothing. You just continue to suffer in your difficulties. But with right understanding, you can make some progress. You can make some progress. Then whatever you do, even though not perfect, will be based on your innermost nature, and little by little something will be achieved. So you can make progress and something can be achieved. I think it's okay to tell you that now, because first we have to accept that we are not trying to achieve anything in Zazen. We are trying to accept the truth of things the way they are, and then things will begin to be achieved, and then progress will begin to be made. We must give up what we most desire for it to come to us of its own free will. This is the practice. And this enlightenment, this sitting in Zazen and feeling nothing, is echoing Dogen's teaching, whereby we are not necessarily even aware of our own enlightenment. When we are in the state of enlightenment, we are not necessarily even aware of that state of enlightenment. Because there would be a knowing subject, and there would be that duality between us and the ultimate truth of things, the ultimate nature of things. In many ways, this teaching is echoing or reverberating with the teaching in the Diamond Sutra, a Mahayana Sutra, that teaches that the awakened being, the Bodhisattva, is not even necessarily aware that they are a Bodhisattva. So we see this teaching in the Diamond Sutra, we see it coming through Dogen, and we see it coming here today in the teachings of Suzuki Roshi. Which is important, to attain enlightenment or to attain enlightenment before you attain enlightenment? To make $1 million or to enjoy your life in your effort, little by little, even though it is impossible to make that million. So, yeah. Or to find some meaning in your effort to be successful. If you do not know the answer, you will not even be able to practice Zazen. If you do know, you will have found the true treasure of life. The true treasure of life. So, the true treasure of life is what we have now. It's what you have now. Even though you have difficulties, even though you have pain, even though you have struggles, afflictions, anxieties, you still have the true treasure of life, even in the midst of that, in the midst of anxiety, in the midst of joy, in the midst of happiness, in the midst of depression, in the midst of suffering. Because The true treasure of life is being able to live life. Because we will always struggle towards some ideal future, to some $1 million, as Suzuki Roshi puts it there, to some $1 million out there in the future, which we struggle towards. We may die before we ever make that million. We can spend all our lives trying to pay off a mortgage and never get the house. We can die before we get the house. This life here, this life now, is the true treasure that Suzuki Roshi is talking about. And finding the roundness of the moon through its disturbed vision because it's interrupted by a tree, hearing the mountain silence, the mountain calmness, only when a bird sings to disturb it. This is the secret of living. This is the secret of practice. And here, the ideal state and the actual are reconciled into what is true. And that's what happens here in the cushion in Zazen. The unconditioned state and the conditioned state of our ordinary lives is harmonized. This is at the center of our practice. So, thanks for your attention today. That was calmness. Next time we're moving on to experience, not philosophy. And that's on page 123. So that's what we'll be reading next. So thanks for your attention. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your life, whatever you're doing today. And don't forget to sit. Thank you.